Hi, it's Paulie here. Black cherry wine. So, I am a miniatures gamer. That's how I got into role-playing games. Like the guys that started off the genre in the first place, yes, pushing lead figures across tables. I still have a great love of it. And of course, many of us started with ancients. Most war games have a love for the ancient through to medieval period. There have been many different rules. Some of them have been massively over-complex. Some out there now embrace simplicity. I came across a set at the local games club which intrigued me, and I'm going to share it. Okay. It's called Mortem Et Gloriam. Thank you for the correct Latin. This is from the Compendium Edition. So this comes in a box. Now, it's a box of goodies, I shall show you. So, inside the box you got hardcover, book. You also got deck cards, some specialty dice, which we'll go over, Nido bag, cheat sheets for the rules. Lots of cheat sheets for the rules, so if you've got like a couple of players aside, that's a great idea. And here, these discs. So this one, they come in different types, these boxes. You can ask for like grass green or desert. The reason is these are counters designed to be put on the table. If you're playing on grass, these have got like a grass backing so they don't mess up the look of the table. And they're color coded on the other side. We will come to what these color codes mean in a second. First, let's place this crap back in the box. So, Mortem Et Gloriam. Now, the designers of this, Simon Hall, he did Field of Glory for Osprey Books. It's a popular set of rules. I'm okay with it. They do the job. All of these Ancients rule sets are okay. You will get a result out of them. They are well play tested with varied playtesting groups, so it doesn't just reflect the tastes of one group. How they vary is in the detail of simulation that they attempt and complexity. This game is deceptively non-complex. It is extremely complex at first blush, but it's a bit deceptive. It actually isn't really. It just kind of makes you balk a bit. Simulatively, it's very, very good. Now, what they have done is they've done a system that it can be used for, ancient Egypt through to medieval, like so many of these things. So, the first thing they've done is they've just said that the basic kind of units, maneuver elements that you use on the board, they're calling them UGs, which is unit groups. So they said that people belong to a unit. I am Legionary Gluteus Maximus. I'm from the 3rd Maniple, 1st Cohort, 9th Legion. Fantastic. But what's actually there on the battlefield that the actual general looks at, who am I putting up there? It's like, well, these guys tend to maneuver in groups, centuries or tribal groups or regiments or what have you. So, unit group is a maneuver group of soldiers. There are two different types. There are skirmish unit groups and there are tactical unit groups, and this is what I like in this game for starters. They treat skirmishes properly. So there are different kinds of troop definitions. Now they define them by how they move is one way, and how they operate. So they could be formed guys who form up shoulder to shoulder and move in a block. Greek hoplites, phalangites, this sort of thing. Shield walls. They might be people who can fight in a looser formation. So, for instance, medieval, like we're talking 10th, 11th, 12th century Japanese, who tend to be quite loose. They've got like naganatas that require a great deal of space to use. So we're not shoulder to shoulder, we're kind of more individual fighters. These guys tend to be very, very, very dangerous if you can get into like a swirling sword fight and melee brawl. There's also skirmishes. Now skirmishes fight as clouds that operate in an area, and they've got some form of circulating tactic. So, like if they are horse archers, you will have a body that hangs back. You'll get different groups that will race forward, and they might race across the front of the enemy, firing at close range, and then retire back to let the horses breathe and reload while another group comes in, and another comes in at a different angle. That's very classic sort of, African style. Roman style javelin skirmishes. They'll fight like in Cantabrian circles. They will ride in a circle with their shield on the outside, throwing as they get to the closest point of the enemy, and they'll circulate round and round and round, aiming at one point of the enemy, trying to weaken that down. So lots of ebb and flow. Foot archers, you get different skirmish groups who will like attack and fall back and attack and fall back. But there are also, what I like, composite groups that can be skirmishes or formed. So let us say you've got Mongol horse archers. You get this cloud of horse archers swarming around, looking for the flanks, working their way around, pecking, trying to find weak points, wearing someone down. But essentially, when you blow the whistle, they can form together into a formed unit, and now they're formed and they attack. So it makes those armies have a real feel of how they work. Let's say you've got Parthians from the AD 25 or thereabouts. Yes, you've got your fully armoured cataphract nobles back here, and you've got swarms of archers who are trying to essentially weaken down the enemy so these guys can get in. But to win the game, you've got to essentially wipe out a percentage of the other guy's formed troops. So in the case of, say, Parthians, where those archers can't form themselves up, these armoured cavalry are the things that you send in to try, after the guy's weakened, to try and break the enemy lines. But if you lose them, you lose the whole battle. Even if most of your swarms of sort of peasant horse archers are still alive, you lost the nobility, you lost the hard hitters, the rest of the guys retire. So interesting. Now, first time I've really seen skirmishes treated quite that well. And of course, when things approach skirmishes, they tend to skirmish back, so you don't get this thing where I charge them and you roll to see if you evade. No, they skirmish back. They're still doing shots and taking shots. Different sorts of troops can have special tactics and so on that troop uses. They get like keywords that are associated with them, like that. So for instance, if you've got Huns and so on, or Mongols again, these are troops that have feigned flight is a thing that they've got with them. So if you've got skirmishes of these guys operating in front of you, they do feigned flight. If you have mounted troops and so on that are facing them, they tend to break ranks to chase these guys. We got them on the run, look, they're fleeing. So they tend to draw the other guys on in disorder. But there are also groups that shove people back, or other ones that can, like Swiss pike, who can defend their flanks as they go forwards. All these interesting little special things that you get. They're also, you rate groups for their skill, particularly as archers and so on, so you have highly skilled archers and whatever. There are also groups that have missile fire inherent in essentially a Malay group, so Byzantine thematic cavalry, who have a rear rank of archers. These fire when they charge or when they receive a charge, so you get this sort of missile hammer as they go in, but they don't enter into longer firefights. They don't actually fire like in the firing phase of the game. Now, they've got a really kind of interesting system, and that's why we've got these discs and these cards. So these cards are all color-coded. In case you're colorblind, I'm interested that they thought of this. They also got numbers on the cards, but essentially different colors are worth more than others, but they've got a number on them in case you can't see that. A lot of battle systems have a you go, I go system. I move all of my stuff, my turn's done. You move all of your stuff, your turn's done. In this case, it's filtered back and forth through. So for each general that you've got, you draw a number of these cards in secret. And you get more or less of them depending on the quality of the general. But when it gets into the turn, one of you has the initiative. The card deck's kind of put on that guy's side to let everyone know he's starting with the initiative. He starts off and he has to play a card. These cards initiate moves from the troops. Now, the cards that are worth lots are obviously far less common than, you know, the grungy cards. But highly disciplined troops can do quite complex maneuvers using lower valued cards. Tribal kind of troops, they can't really do very complex things. So sudden about turns, turning sideways and, you know, moving out of the way and then, you know, refronting, all these sorts of things. It's much easier due to this card system for highly disciplined, highly drilled troops to do. So let us say our Byzantine Cavalry there, suddenly these guys feel like Byzantines. I can come on, I can tease someone on, I can do a feigned flight, I've got my shock of missiles before it comes in, and I'm incredibly maneuverable because I'm incredibly well trained. So swarms of kind of ill-disciplined, you know, Allens and Huns and so on attack me, I'm actually, you know, splitting and flanking them, and so I can make a small group of highly trained regulars do things that, you know, can start halting swarms of less disciplined guys. So, you know, there we have it. We've got some really nice mechanisms in there. It's a one player plays a card, the next player plays a card, and you keep going until the cards are done. So it kind of therefore simulates like a simultaneous movement system as individual groups get to do their thing. You can pass. If you pass twice in a row, then you've passed for that kind of segment of the turn and the other guy can just keep going. You can substitute high value cards for sort of low value ones. You don't, if it only costs you like a level 1 card to do this and all you've got to level 5, you spend the 5 to do it. Now the combat's really kind of nifty. This is where the dice come in. You've got dice and they've got little skulls in them, which are hits. There's S's on them, which is a special effect, and there's a crossed spear, crossed sword and arrow, which are a hit. So your units are made up from bases of troops, which have got multiple figures on them. Now, when you get into combat, your unit, you start with like a median dice. Everyone gets the same dice. But then you make a claim. If the other guy is your preferred type of opponent. So if you are elephants, the thing you most like is trampling on kind of tribal infantry, compacted guys who aren't really disciplined and can't make lanes to sort of, you know, put you down. You want to stomp and squish them into toe jam more than anything in the entire universe. So you say, if that's your favourite thing, so I claim you get a raise to a better type of dice. If you are more skilled than the other guy, well, I'm experts and these guys are pointless idiots. Ha! That's a claim. You get a raise. The other guy also gets some claims as well. But basically, you go up and down dice depending on those circumstances. You roll the dice. Skulls is a hit. It removes one of the elements from a unit. The little X's, they are like a wound. If a unit takes a couple of wounds, it'll lose a base. And the little S, that triggers a special effect if your unit has one. So for instance, if you are someone that shoves units back, like a dense pike formation or elephants, then the S will trigger that, right? These guys fall backwards and they lose cohesion because you've, you know, muscled your way into them. Really nice idea. It brings this kind of interesting flavour in. So the troops, I'm finding that the way this game identifies troop types is more colourful and in many cases more accurate than what I've normally seen. There's been a habit in games to homogenise. These are blade! Or what's blade? Oh, it's Vikings with two-handed axes. You know? Or it's also, you know, Romans with pilums and swords. Or it's samurais. Well, those are actually very different people with very different aims and goals. So it brings this in. Now, the discs, these disky poos, these are the cards done as discs. And the idea is if you don't want the big cards, because they might look a bit, they might muck up your table a little bit. These are grass green, so you lay the cards next to each general and spend them. But if you don't want that to sort of get in the way, you can punch these out, put them in the bag provided, shake them, and when it's your turn to pull out stuff, I pull out 5 discs and they go down next to my guy. So you've got these discs as a more cosmetic thing. Now they're very, very good in this game at pointing out that the idea is to preserve the spectacle and the fun, particularly the fun. They've got a pre-battle system in there, which I quite like. It's the 5 days before battle. It's very abstracted, but what you do is you've got a little grid, and you kind of, each of you sort of, one of you is attacking, one of you is defending, and so one of you kind of tries to pick the ideal terrain you want to be in. So it's like, oh, well, I've got lots of loose kind of tribal Gallic infantry and not a lot of cavalry for some reason, and he's Roman. I don't want to meet him on open plain, so I'm going to hug to the woods. But what happens is you each kind of play these cards again, and you try and outmaneuver each other with this little kind of mini card game. And as you win or lose, you're maneuvered on the grid. So I'm going to start off in dense woods, hidden with like both flanks incredibly secured, so I can't be outflanked. All right, well, no, the Romans get really good at outmaneuvering you. Well, now you've only got one flank for each. Well, now you're in loose terrain, so there's some open ground, some hills and some wood. All right, you keep going. Well, you ended up on the plain, and that's the day where the battle begins, because this goes for 5 moves. So they've got that. They've also got a whole campaign system in there. You can just get a club or get a couple of friends or whatever. Instant campaign game system in the main rules. One thing that they've clung to in this is the idea that they want to embrace modern technologies and try and get the young'uns playing. And so they're trying to not lock themselves into printed material. Like they say, we want to reach out to players to whom you know, phones and tablets are as intuitive to them as teenagers as, you know, kicking a football was to them. I don't know, I didn't kick a football, frankly. I painted lead miniatures, and swung an awful lot of swords, because I'm that gal. But so what they have is a lot of online resources. They have army lists and so on online. They have army builders, like you can fiddle around with your points and list stuff online. They're not locking themselves into stuff that's written in stone as army lists, as people have tested this and it's had to be tweaked. The tweaks go on there as a living document, which is great. Now, downsides. The downsides of this are, for one thing, love you, want to be you for Halloween, reading the rules. These rules are somewhat impenetrable to read. They are somewhat impenetrable to read because they spend an awful lot of time telling you who they are, why you should listen to them, how clever they are, what they're going to tell you, what they're really going to tell you. Honestly, we're going to get around to telling you this. We absolutely swear I'm not exaggerating. I think I got to something like page 45 or thereabouts before I found any rules. Anything that actually told me about how to do this. Yep, somewhere in the 30s. So there was this huge 40-odd pages of introduction, and then each section has lots of introduction telling you why it's doing this, how it's doing this, what it's going to show you. So it does take a while to get to the meat. Now, I know why they've done it. Wargames Research Group stuff, Phil Barker, Lord bless him, their stuff was so compacted and so let's just get straight to the business and confuse you with charts and numbers that it was like being hit in the face with a truck door. It's like, bang, you just suddenly had to like face this almost indecipherable gobbledygook that, you know, passed as rules. So these guys have tried to clarify that as much as possible, but it does take patience to carve through the fat to get to the actual muscle, the mechanics that drive the rules of the game you're going to play. However, I will say they are very, very well illustrated. They are full of gorgeous paintings and they're full of good graphics showing you potential problems and questions before they arise. Here's how you move, here's how you turn, here's how this is measured, here's how that is done. So they've tried to anticipate and solve all of these problems. Look, in intent, I think these rules were born from dissatisfaction with the more homogenized feel that was creeping into Wargames rules for the ancient period, where part of the attraction of the ancient period has been its incredible diversity, the different effects of different weapons and fighting styles and troop types. You know, the radical difference between a Roman legionary in armor with his sword trying to close, you know, to fight, but he's shoulder to shoulder. Why is he different to a Gallic tribesman who's also got a shield and a sword and is trying to fight. Well, they've got different intent. They've actually got different formations. They've got different things they're trying to do. So this has brought in all of this colour very well. I love the way it's handled skirmishes. It feels great. These things, these clouds of guys coming in, manoeuvring. You can envelop for once. You know, you can shower the stuff down. Chaos results where the skirmishes are operating because orders aren't passed. It's harder for people to manoeuvre. They slow down once you get skirmishes in the area, which is exactly what skirmishes are for. So you can use them to kind of screen your guys while I'm going to slow him down while I move around as a side, or, you know, break through. So you're making proper military sort of decisions based on proper military troops. I think it's good work. Now those cards, the only other unfortunate thing is the cards take a little getting used to. There's a big old chart, and this big old chart, ta-da, has the type of different moves you might be trying to make and what colour card minimum you're going to need to do it. It isn't as hard to come to terms with that as you think, but when you look at it the first couple of times, it's daunting. It's like, oh my god, what am I going to do? So your first couple of games are going to be learning games, and what they've actually done is they've done a series of kind of suggestions for your learning scenario. They're aware that you might balk, so it says play a game this size with just this number of troops and just do this. Next one, introduce this. Next one, introduce this. So they've just got the increasing level of difficulties until you've learned it all. I like that. Someone anticipated learning curve and built that in there. So the cards, you get it. You know, once you play a little bit, oh, okay, this one's kind of like the Trump one. It lets me do it. Oh, this one, these guys are basically not going to do anything unless I like really give them the high value stuff. So I should give him the really good general. He's got a higher chance of doing that. I get it now. So look, I think you get a good game out of these. Some other little minor things these guys have done. Printed in the rules are essentially printed miniatures. They're just miniature bases that they've made. You can just print, cut those out and play. So if you don't have miniatures, you can just play and you can replace them with miniatures you want. Plastic Soldier is the company. These guys have also got a whole range of plastic box miniatures, which are pretty damn cheap. So again, you can play this without breaking the bank, because 28 miniatures in lead, I mean, I love them, I adore them, but it's just too expensive. Every one of these things is going to cost you $5. How many you got on the table? Oh, 1,000. Oh my God! Whereas if you buy, you know, a box of a couple of hundred plastics, it's like, oh, what's that going to cost you? $40 for a couple of hundred? Sold! So I really like what they've done there. So look, they started with a premise. We want more simulation. We want more colour. We want to get away from the ritual you go, I go space. We want this to be more interactive. We want more kind of, we want the skirmishing tactics. We want you to be able to pick tactics based on your strengths. You know, these legionaries are like really vicious and we want them hand to hand. These guys are really good at feigning flight, you know. So all of those characteristics come out. So that was what they wanted. They did it. They've done it in a way that is very playable. And what I like about it is they've done things that make this teachable and livable. They've got those progressive difficulties of games in there for learning games. They've got that pre-battle, and they've got the built-in campaign systems in there, so they cover like every aspect really of wargaming right there. They've got the printed miniatures. They've got their own range of affordable plastic miniatures. They've even done things like these discs for, you know, heightening the look of your game if you didn't want cards. So my impression is that these guys are gamers. I think they have written this as a love letter to a genre of gaming that they adore, and as such I think the love shines through, and the end result has been a very playable game that I think you'll really enjoy. If you're looking at getting into Ancients, look these guys up. This is a very interesting piece of work. It is divided into different scales that you can play, so that you can have more or less figures representing a unit. It works with any basing. If you already have troops that you use for another system, you can just use them. Don't worry about it. If you want to play 28mm, play 28mm. My favorite is 6mm. I adore 6mm figures. They just look like an aerial shot of a battlefield. They work perfectly with 6mm as well. So it's adaptable to whatever you and your group want to do. Mortem Et Gloriam. Go and check it out. It's a beautiful piece of work. And it's actually a pretty good introduction to ancient gaming. So yes, get out there, paint some lead, get the dice rolling and enjoy. Cheers.